Welcome back, amazing business owners, to another episode of Business Straight Up, the podcast for creative business owners, entrepreneurs, photographers, to design your life from the ground up, starting with your business. How do you stand out in a business, right? All of the noise, everything's happening. I want to help you stand out so that you can really book those clients you need. In today's episode, we're going to kind of talk about something a little different. This is something that I get asked a lot. Today, we are going to talk about how to schedule your days as a business owner. And this is especially important right now when so many parents are facing school options that they didn't expect when we all thought about the way that this year was going to go. In this episode, I actually created this one and the next episode as one, but it ended up being so long that I split it into two because I wanted to give you a bite-sized chunk that you can listen to quickly. There's some encouragement. We're going to talk about some sample schedules and some tips to create that schedule and how to really pivot and change your schedule up based on what your family or your life needs at the moment, because everything changes. And right now, especially, things are changing. It feels like by the minute. So in this part of this episode, you are going to hear how I break up my days, what the schedule looks like. I'll even give you sample schedules based on different scenarios that I have faced in my own life, especially when it comes to having my kids in different schools and different school schedules and all that good stuff. You will notice at the end of this episode that it ends kind of abruptly because, again, I wasn't planning on this being an episode by itself, but I wanted to break it up. So I can't wait for you to hear this. As always, if this content is inspiring to you, if you held your hand up and you're like, yes, girl, yes, I would absolutely love it if you can head on over to iTunes and leave a review. Those reviews help me to get amazing guests on the podcast. It helps me know what you need. What do you need help with? We are going through such an unprecedented time right now, and I really want to help you stand out in your business to get those clients booked, be making some dollars, right? So if you can pause right now here, I'll wait. Did you do it? Head on over to iTunes, leave a review, or if you're listening to this now, if you can take a screenshot, post it on Instagram as a post, not a story, post it on Instagram, tag me at Business Straight Up. I would love to hear your ahas, your takeaways, and what you loved. So without further ado, let's dive right into how to schedule your day when you're a CEO of your own business. Hey there, awesome people. I am Brooke Summer, and you are listening to Business Straight Up, the podcast for creative entrepreneurs to learn, connect, grow, and build the business and life that they dream of. Welcome, let's get going and dive right in. Hello, amazing business owners. Welcome back to another episode of Business Straight Up, the podcast for creative business owners, photographers, and entrepreneurs. Basically, I want to help you stand out in your marketing so you can book the clients you need and kick ass in your business, right? Build a life and a business that you have designed from the ground up that you love. Today, we are going to talk about something that I get asked a lot, and it's how to schedule my days. Now, this has changed so much throughout the years, and you have probably heard me say that I only work with clients 2 days a week, and those are my photography clients, and that is completely true. But I want to tell you that everything changes. Like, this is changing constantly. So what I tell you today may change next week. I don't know. We'll see. First, I want to say that this episode is going to be filled with help for parents specifically. But if you are not a parent, or if your kids are grown, this is still relevant and valuable for you. I've had so many students ask how I schedule my days, regardless of being a parent or not, because when you work for yourself, you don't have a set schedule. You don't have a boss telling you what hours to be there and what hours not to be there. And sometimes what ends up happening is that you end up working all the time because you don't know how to turn it off. Oh my gosh, totally happened to me. Right now is especially chaotic as we look at 2020. We are still in the midst of this craziness. This is a crazy year, and life throws curveballs at all of us, whether it's parenting related or not. You may have to be a caretaker for a parent or a grandparent, or maybe your day job throws you for a loop when they change expectations and you have to completely change your business. No matter what stage of life you're in, whether you have kids or not, we all face chaos every once in a while, and 2020 has definitely given its fair share to most of us. There's a quote that we love from the movie Dodgeball that we say a lot in our home. It's so funny. My youngest has actually not seen the movie, obviously, because it is not age appropriate. But my oldest has seen the movie, and we say this a lot. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Basically, if you can work through the hard stuff and still figure it out when things aren't going your way, and it seems like everything is crumbling around you, you will be able to pivot and thrive even more when things aren't as challenging. Let's chat about how to schedule your days as a business owner and being a CEO and a parent at the same time, right? Before we dive in, first, I'm going to ask that we all just take a deep breath together, because this year, it has not been the easiest year, right? But that's okay. We'll make it. We'll get through. When the pandemic shut everything down in March, we heard so many different opinions. And there was one that kept going over and over again that persisted with all of the experts, with all of the school people. And we kept hearing it, that things would be back to normal around summertime. And then they weren't. And then we were looking at the school year starting, and we held out hope. I was one of those. I held out hope. Who was with me? Raise your hand. We held out hope. And here we are, almost September. School has started for most of us, and nothing is back to normal. There are so many different options right now, and it depends on your state and your county and your school district and more. And I have seen so many friends share with tears that they are frustrated that some districts have full in-school options and some don't. And basically, it's just one huge clusterfuck right now. There really is no sugarcoating it. It is just a big mess. With that being said, I want to be a little voice of encouragement in your ear right now. No matter what options you were given or what you ultimately chose for your kids, you are doing a great job. The fact that you're listening to this shows that you care about your family and your business, and that you want to learn how to set yourself up so that you don't have to choose one over the other. And yes, it is possible for them to coexist no matter what school option you have decided on, and you can do this. You are exactly where you need to be, and everything that is happening in our world right now is happening for you and not to you. And that can be a really hard reality to swallow sometimes. But I promise if you let go of the frustration and the anger and the grief for the next few minutes and soak all of this in, you might feel a little less overwhelmed. You have options. You have choices. You are powerful and strong, and you will get through this, all of it. You will come out on the other side stronger and even more powerful. You might have learned more swear words. Your kids might have picked them up as well. You might have more gray hair, but you will get through this. So let's change our perspective in all of this, because this is happening for us, not to us. And we will learn, and we will pivot, and we will thrive even more when we come out on the other side. Let's encourage one another, love on one another, and cheer each other on, even if we're doing something different from the person next to us. Okay, another deep breath together. Ready? Feel free to go back and listen to that again if you need it. Sometimes we just need a little bit of encouragement. Sometimes we're having a bad day. If you need that, go back to it and listen to it as many times as you need to. To start all of this, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. It's really interesting to me to look back on what has happened and how it has prepared me for other things, because I can assure you that when I was going through it, it sure as hell didn't feel like it was a positive. It really did not feel like it was happening for me. And I'm sure that you might be in the same boat right now, because none of this feels like a positive right now for so many people. There are days that it just feels overwhelming and crazy. But I promise you, when you look back on this, you're going to see it in a totally different light. Just to give you kind of a breakdown, my son was born in 2004. I was working full time. We had some daycare issues, but figured it out, and I altered schedules with my then husband where necessary to minimize daycare time. We were both working full time. I also had a stepdaughter in middle school. I had to think about that for a moment. And so we were trying to minimize daycare time to make sure one of us was with the kids as much as possible. In 2006, I started my business with my first senior session for a whopping $20 with my point and shoot camera. Woohoo! That was the same year that my marriage ended. I was still working full time, spending a ton of time away from my son. In 2009, I was a single mom, started doing more sessions. I started doing boudoir, which is where my love is, still doing sessions for $20 a session because, when you don't know, you don't know. In 2011, I got married. I was then laid off from my full-time job, freaked out, sobbing in my office. I'm sure you've heard that story. And I decided to go all in on learning the business side of running a business. I started actually looking at numbers to change my pricing and to really look at my hours. Where was I spending my time? I tracked my hours and found 50 to 60 hours a week on average that I was working on my business, which is a lot. My son was in elementary school full time, except for somewhat standard school breaks, spring, summer, fall break, all that good stuff. In 2014, I moved into my first commercial space, my studio, on April 1st. On April 8th, I couldn't remember, April 8th or April 9th, I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter. Surprise! Freaked out. I had just moved into a commercial space. I had just gotten my business to where I wanted to be. And here I am facing another huge life change. My daughter was born in December of 2014. I was tired for basically an entire year because I had a newborn. My son was still in school full time. In 2015, I was nursing my daughter who's newborn. Sometimes she was in the studio while I had sessions. We had 2 rooms in the studio, and so sometimes a family member would take care of her while she was a newborn, and then she would be with grandparents on other days. But this is when I started only working with clients twice a week. It was very important to me to be completely present. I knew that this was going to be my last baby, and I really wanted to be present with her as much as possible. And at this point, I had built my business to allow for that, right? So I could make that decision. In 2016, my son became friends with someone who was very toxic, and we had some serious issues that summer. When my son started school that year, I had asked the school district to do what they could to keep them apart. They said they couldn't guarantee it, okay, but instead of at least trying, they actually assigned them to sit together on the bus. And in March, that assignment caused some big problems. In March, we pulled him out of school completely because of these problems. So March 2016, my son was in 7th grade. He was almost done with his 7th grade year. He had to actually redo his entire 7th grade year from March to June because we didn't know where he was with the school district at that point. We didn't know what he had learned and what he hadn't. So we worked with homeschool and online to make sure that he was up to date in 7th grade so that he could go on to 8th grade. We didn't even know what that was going to look like at that point, but we wanted to make sure he wasn't behind. The 2016-2017 school year was the first year that I was homeschooling a middle schooler with a toddler at home as well, while running my business with a commercial studio space outside the home. And we were also building a new house. So July of that year, we decided to build a new home. It was from the ground up. So we basically put down a huge chunk of money on a big field of land that was nothing at the time. April of 2017, a month after I pulled my son out of school, we moved into our new home. For the 2017 and 2018 school year, my son was enrolled in his aviation and aerospace school, which had partnered with an online school. So it wasn't technically homeschool, but it was 90% done at home with us being responsible for holding him accountable. They still did his grades and stuff. 2018-2019 school year was the same. And at the end of 2019, at the end of the school year, his aviation school dissolved their partnership with the online school, which meant we were back to the drawing board. We had to figure that out because the aviation school did not do things like English and social studies and science and all that good stuff. So 2019-2020 school year, we had to kind of start all over. He was in his aviation school and his aerospace school. And then we decided to homeschool plus enrichment. My daughter was then 4. She was in preschool for 4 days a week, half days. So she went in the mornings. 2020 to 2021, this is the school year that we're currently going into. And because of everything that is happening right now, we actually decided to homeschool my daughter as well. It was not originally what we wanted. We wanted her to be in school full time. We believe very strongly in the benefits of elementary school with other kids. However, it's just not ideal this year. And so this year, both of our kids are homeschooled. They both have enrichment days, meaning there's 1 day a week that they are in a schoolroom environment kind of thing, like a classroom. And then my son also has his aviation and aerospace school. So this is crazy. This is chaos. And you know what? We're just working through it. It's not ideal. I'm fortunate that we do have the support that we have in my family. And I'm so lucky that we can make that decision, but it's hard for everyone right now. I wanted to give you some sample schedules, and then we're going to go into tips on how to make this work. So everyone has asked me, how did you structure your days? And I know that you probably want more details, as in, like, I did social media on this day and I did marketing on this day. But the reality is that you just do what you got to do. You figure it out, right? And I'm working with some students right now in mentoring so that they can figure that out and put into place a system that works for them, because everyone is so very different. And what worked for me may not work for you. And that's part of being a CEO in your business, in figuring that out and really empowering yourself to make that choice and honoring your own body and your own preferences and your own brain. So I'm going to give you some sample schedules. Scenario 1, sample schedule 1, my kid was in full time. School, breaks, all that good stuff. But I didn't have my youngest yet. So my son was in school full time. I didn't have a toddler at home. This was me about circa 2014 when I went into my commercial space. My son went to school at about 8:30. I worked from about 9 to 3. I had networking events in the evening, weddings on the weekend. I was present with him from about 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then I would work until about midnight. I had a very full day. I had a flexible schedule though, but I still was working 50 to 60 hours a week. My son wasn't really with grandparents regularly during the day because of school. This schedule was consistent Monday through Friday, except for holidays or school breaks. Kind of easy. You don't have to think about it too much. You don't have to figure it out too much because you just follow the school calendar, right? So this is what most parents do. But when we pulled him out of school, that kind of terrified us. And can I just take a moment to say that I was not the mom that was pregnant and dreaming of homeschooling my kids, okay? That was not me. I was not the one that's like, homeschooling is what I've always dreamed of. I knew that I would do it for my kids. And I'm not that homeschool mom. I'm just not. I fall somewhere in between of like full-time and stay at home. I want the in-between. And it's not always that black and white. That was not me. I never, ever, ever dreamed that I would be homeschooling my kids just because it's not what I knew. I grew up in public school, and that was the norm. And in my brain, private school was only for rich people and public school was normal. And homeschool, the homeschool kids that I knew were just kind of strange at the time. Homeschool was completely different. Right now for homeschool, we have co-ops and we have all these different options and we have field trips. Homeschool when I was younger was very, very different. And it's something that I didn't envision myself doing ever for a lot of reasons. It just wasn't something that lined up with how I saw my life working. So when we pulled my son out and we went into scenario 2, which is sample schedule 2, the kids are in online school or hybrid school, except for breaks, or if you have littles at home. So if you have the toddlers, the preschoolers at home, basically, you only have a few hours to work every day. So this was me from about 2017 to 2019. My son had online school or homeschool 3 days a week, and my daughter was in preschool 4 days a week in the mornings. So, and I should be clear, my son actually had homeschool more than that, but the 3 days a week was the super regimented. He was all day working, all that good stuff. So it kind of works out to an average. When we were in this scenario number 2, I only took clients 2 days a week. Yes, I know I keep saying that, but I want you to know that it's possible. I will say it again. My business was a multiple six-figure business, and I only worked with clients 2 days a week. You do not have to run yourself into the ground to be profitable, and success is different for everyone. So know what you want, know how to get there, and figure it out. I promise you can. You are powerful. So here's what our schedule was. On Mondays, my son was in his enrichment, which was homeschool enrichment. My daughter was in preschool in the mornings, and then with grandparents in the afternoons. I had a full work day, and I did not book clients on Mondays. So it was just a full work day. That was the day where I made sure everything was lined up. I had my teaching stuff that day, and it was just kind of a work day for me so that I could fully focus on my business, on both businesses at that point. On Tuesday, my son was homeschooled, so he was home, but he's also a teenager, so he was okay working on his own. My daughter was in preschool in the mornings. I worked in the mornings during the preschool homeschool time. My mornings were open to clients, and I was off in the afternoons. On Wednesdays, my son was in his aviation aerospace school. My daughter was in preschool in the mornings, and then with grandparents in the afternoon. I had a full work day for me, and this whole day was open for clients, morning and afternoon sessions. On Thursday, my son was homeschooled. My daughter had preschool in the mornings. I worked in the mornings during preschool homeschool. My mornings were open to clients, but then I was off in the afternoons. Now, you may have heard that and you're like, wait, you just said you had 3 days open to clients. And that is true. What would happen is as soon as the 2 days were booked, I would block off the third because I knew I only wanted to have clients 2 days a week. That's just how I wanted to run my business. And so we made it happen. Now, every once in a while, someone would grab those slots really quickly and I would have clients 3 days a week. But sometimes I would make up for it by only doing one client the following week. So it just depends. I want you to remember that you are the boss. You get to make these rules. On Fridays, I was off with my kids. I would take a rare client if absolutely necessary, but usually that wasn't the case. Fridays were my days with the kids because I don't love doing things like the zoo on the weekends. They're just crazy busy. And so I preferred to go on Fridays. That's the time I took with my kids. Again, I'm the boss. I get to make the rules. I usually open up one Saturday a month for clients with a premium price if they had to have a Saturday. So some people are absolutely stuck on doing a weekend, and that's fine. I'm happy to honor that, but it is on a very limited basis at a premium price. These Saturdays filled pretty quickly, and my husband would take the kids and go somewhere fun with them while I had clients. We are now in what I call scenario 3, sample schedule 3. My kids are fully homeschooled. Now I say fully homeschooled because per state requirements, we are required to do the transcripts. We are fully responsible for their education. The school has no part in it. However, both kids are homeschooled with enrichment, meaning they have that 1 day a week where they can go to a classroom setting, be with friends, all that good stuff. And my son still attends his aviation and aerospace school. I want you to remember that no matter what you choose, there are options and support where you need it. So even if you decide to homeschool, it doesn't mean that your kids are at home all the time. You do have other options. This is where we're at now. Monday, my kids are gone. They're in enrichment. I have almost a full work day for me from about 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. On Tuesday, my kids are with grandparents. I have a full work day from about 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is open to clients, meaning they can book me on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, my kids are with grandparents and one is in his special school. I have a full work day from about 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and this is also open to clients. So on my calendar, they can book Wednesdays as well. On Thursday, my kids are homeschooled. I will work in the afternoon if necessary, things like emails, the things that you have to catch up on. But I don't take clients on Thursdays. And I'm going to talk more about our homeschool schedule and what this looks like in just a second, but we're going to finish out the week. Fridays, my kids homeschool to finish the week, although a lot of times we work ahead because I'm a big fan of working way ahead so that one day, if you just don't feel like doing it, you don't have to and you're not behind. Friday, we finish out the week with homeschool. We usually do something fun. Right now with the weather nice, we go paddleboarding or we'll go for a hike or something like that. Basically, I'm off. I can work in the afternoons if I want to, but I don't usually work on Fridays. Saturdays, I still open one Saturday a month for clients. Again, it's at a premium price. You'd be amazed at how many people all of a sudden have the option to do a weekday when they realize that Saturday has a premium price. I have to worry more about childcare. I have to cover all bases for Saturdays. So if someone really wants that time, there is going to be a cost involved. Now, believe me, I know how lucky I am to have family. And you might be listening to this saying, Brooke, I don't have grandparents to help. And I hear you and I get it. I want to encourage you to think outside the box on this one. Do you have friends where you could swap for a day? Or do you have another way to work around this? If not, can you get a few hours of work in on your business after bedtime? There are so many studies that have shown that more work hours is not necessarily better or more productive. Your work can likely be done in fewer hours with focus. I really struggle with focusing, but I find it much easier when I know that I'm not going to be interrupted. I can really dive into those projects that I need to work on when I know I'm not going to have someone busting in all the time, also known as when the kids aren't home. I want to encourage you to really put some thought into what works best for you, what your ideal schedule looks like, and see how you can move things around to fit. You saw with my 3 different scenarios, our schedules changed drastically. My husband works Monday through Friday, basically 8 to 5:30. Okay. There's not really a lot of room for him to change that. He doesn't have a lot of flexibility in his schedule. So in order to make this work, I am the one that has to be flexible. But it is possible when you are the CEO and you are the boss in your business, you can do it. I promised I would talk about our homeschooling schedule. So here's a quick tidbit on it. When everything got shut down in March of 2020, I tried to mimic my daughter's school schedule by doing reading in the morning, then afternoons off, and it was a disaster. I still remember crying. I actually took a selfie of me because I wanted to remember this, laying in my bed and crying because it was so not working. I figured it worked for the school. Why not for me? I felt like a failure. All of these schedule pieces require a lot of experimentation. When something doesn't work, it doesn't make it a failure. It means that the experiment didn't work out. So you move on to the next one. Look at all of this like a scientist. Remember earlier when I said I'm not a scientist? Yeah, this one is really hard for me. But when I started to force myself to shift my perspective, it makes it so much easier to pivot and not focus on what we think of as failures. Reading in the morning didn't work for us, so we switched it around and have found that this schedule works very well for us. First thing in the morning, we do something creative. This can be painting, drawing, coloring. We even call it coffee and coloring. We just sit at the table and create. My daughter needs that time. I don't know why. It's okay. I just honor the way she's made, and I figure if it works, it works. We're going with it. We do the homeschooling stuff afterwards, the curriculum, the reading, the math, and whatever is necessary. We have lunch while watching something educational so that it makes me feel better about watching TV during lunch. Whatever, don't judge me. We love Planet Earth, Shark Week, Blue Planet, One Strange Rock if you have Disney Plus, and more. After that, my daughter does independent reading time, and I actually physically set a timer so that she knows how much time she has. We have very basic books that she's been working on reading. She's doing so well. After that is outside and movement time. Now, all of this, I'm kind of talking about my youngest, but my oldest, actually, this mirrors her schedule as well. So he does his work in the morning. He watches lunch with us, and then outside and movement time, they go together to go play. Sometimes it's at the park. Sometimes my son wants to go fishing, and we switch off who gets to choose where they go every day. And I actually write it down because this turned into a fight and I wasn't willing to do it anymore. I don't enjoy the drama, the fights between my kids. So they go outside, they play. Sometimes we'll go for a walk. Sometimes we'll go to the park. It just depends on the day. After reading and movement, they get to have free time. And this is usually about an hour and a half. But with this, screens are only an option during free time if reading and movement happen without argument. So screens, I mean TV, iPads, whatever, movies, doesn't matter. Frankly, I was done arguing with my kids. So this rule has worked very well for us. If they want screens during free time, for my son, it's some of his flying games. And for my daughter, she just wants to watch movies. So during free time, if they want screens, then they have to do their schoolwork and movement time without arguing. It works really well for us. Again, figure out what works for your family. At about 5 o'clock, my kids do their chores, usually while I'm figuring out dinner, and all of their chores are listed for each day. Both kids have them. And after that, we do family time. My husband is done with work. I'm done with work, and we just enjoy each other, relax, do whatever we're going to do. Above all else, in all of this, you have to figure out what works for you. If you try something and your kids are screaming and crying and hate it, switch it up, make some changes. If you try something and you are screaming and crying and hating it, switch it up, make some changes. Maybe you discover that after the weekend, your kids are really into working on schoolwork on Mondays and you can do half of the entire week on a Monday, then do it. The point is, there is no one size fits all to any of this. Homeschooling gives you maximum flexibility over hybrid, but even with hybrid, figure out what works best with your family. Even with regular school schedules, figure out what works best for your family. Every kid is different. Every person is different. Every family is different. You do not need permission from anyone to do what works best for your family. I'm going to repeat that again because I know I need to hear it sometimes too. You do not need permission from anyone on this planet to do what works best for your family. That is your choice, your family. Everyone is different, and you are empowered to make decisions based on what is best for your family. Thank you so much for listening to Business Straight Up. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Check out the show notes for this and all of the episodes at businessstraightuppodcast.com. And I can't wait to talk with you again. Have a great day.